My parents me all my life and wanted to sue me for money, and my stepsister with her lover my shop and paid the consequences. Hey everyone, I could really use some advice here. I hesitate to post it here, so we recently moved into a bigger house. My parents have always been pretty busy with work, and this new house was supposed to be a fresh start for all of us. The thing is, I am 14 now, and ever since I was 5, I've kind of had to fend for myself. My grandma used to help out sometimes, but now it's just me most of the time. Starting a new school was a nightmare. From day one, I felt like an outsider. It is a small town, and everyone already had their own groups. No one was interested in making friends with the new kid. To make matters worse, I was immediately targeted by a group of bullies. There was Jake, the ringleader, with his cronies, Ryan and Alex. They made it their mission to make my life miserable. The bullying started off with snide comments and dirty looks, but it quickly escalated. They'd trip me in the hallways, knock my books out of my hands, and even lock me in the janitor-S closet a few times. One time, they spread a rumor that I wet my bed, which earned me the humiliating nickname Wet Willie for months. No one believed me when I tried to defend myself. My parents were too busy with their own lives to notice. My dad got a big promotion, which was why we moved in the first place, and my mom was always stressed out about her job. Whenever I tried to bring up what was happening at school, they'd brush it off as me being dramatic or say that I needed to toughen up. It wasn't just the bullies that made school unbearable. The teachers didn't seem to care either. When I reported the bullying, they'd just tell me to ignore it or that boys will be boys. One time I finally snapped and got into a fight with Jake. Of course, I was the one who got detention. The principal called my parents and they were furious with me. They didn't want to hear my side of the story. All they saw was that I'd gotten into trouble. Things took a turn for the worse when Jake and his gang started spreading rumors that I was gay. Not that there's anything wrong with being gay, but in a small conservative town, it was like a death sentence. Kids started avoiding me even more, and the bullying intensified. They'd shove me into lockers, write slurs on my locker, and shout insults at me in the halls. My grades started slipping because I couldn't concentrate in class. Every day I was filled with dread just thinking about going to school. I started skipping classes and hiding in the library or the bathroom just to avoid the bullies. I felt completely alone and hopeless. One day, things hit rock bottom. Jake and his friends cornered me in the locker room after gym class. They were taunting me as usual, but this time they took it too far. Jake pulled out his phone and started recording while Ryan and Alex held me down. They stripped me of my clothes and threw them across the room. I was completely naked, trying to cover myself while they laughed and recorded everything. I felt utterly humiliated and powerless. After they left, I stayed in the locker room for what felt like hours, just crying and trying to figure out how to go on. I couldn't face anyone. When I finally went home, my parents didn't even notice that anything was wrong. They were too wrapped up in their own issues to see that their son was falling apart. I started thinking about ways to escape the pain. I thought about running away or even hurting myself, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The only thing that kept me going was the thought of getting out of this town and starting over somewhere new. I decided I needed to focus on my future, on getting into a good university and leaving all this behind. But the bullying didn't stop. One day someone posted the video from the locker room online. It went viral in our school, and I became even more of a target. The comments were brutal, and people would snicker and point at me wherever I went. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of the humiliation. I knew I needed help, but I didn't know where to turn. My parents were oblivious, the teachers were useless, and I didn't have any friends to confide in. I started seeing the school counselor, but it didn't help much. She just told me to stay positive and that things would get better, but I couldn't see how. I became more and more withdrawn. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and started failing all my classes. I was a mess. I didn't see a way out, and I was terrified that this was going to be my life forever. That SS, when I discovered the internet. I started spending all my time online, escaping into the virtual world where I could be anyone I wanted. I found forums and chat rooms where I could talk to people who didn't know about my real-life problems. It was a small comfort, but it was enough to keep me going. One day, while browsing online, I stumbled across a website for a prestigious university. They had a program for students who had faced adversity and overcome it. Something clicked inside me. I realized that maybe I could use my experiences to my advantage, to show that I was resilient and determined. I threw myself into my studies, determined to get the grades I needed to apply. It was tough, especially with the constant bullying, but I kept reminding myself that I had a goal. I stayed up late studying, used online resources to catch up on missed lessons, and even started attending extra tutoring sessions. As the application deadline approached, I poured my heart into my personal statement. I wrote about the bullying, the humiliation, and the loneliness. I wrote about how I had learned to stand up for myself and how I was determined to create a better future. It was the hardest thing I'd ever written, but it was also cathartic. For the first time, I felt like I was taking control of my own story. The day I submitted my application, I felt a glimmer of hope. I knew that getting accepted was a long shot, but it was the first time in a long time that I felt like I had something to look forward to. The months that followed were some of the hardest. The bullying continued, and my parents remained oblivious, but I held on to that hope. When the acceptance letter finally came, I couldn't believe it. I had been accepted into the university's special program. I was going to get out of this town and start over. Telling my parents was bittersweet. They were proud, of course, but they didn't understand the full extent of what I had been through. They saw the acceptance as a validation of their decision to move and their hard work, not realizing how much I had suffered. As I packed my bags for university, I felt a mix of excitement and fear. I was finally leaving the place that had caused me so much pain, but I was also stepping into the unknown. I didn't know if things would be better, but I was determined to make the most of this opportunity. So here I am, about to start a new chapter in my life. I am scared, but I am also hopeful. I know that I have a lot of healing to do, but I am ready to take the first step. Thanks for reading my story. Any advice or words of encouragement would be greatly appreciated. Hey everyone, I am back with an update. Thanks so much for all the support and advice from my last post. It really helped me to keep moving forward. Here's what has been happening since then. So I got accepted into the university's special program, which felt like a dream come true. The first few weeks were overwhelming. I was in a new city, surrounded by new people, and for the first time, I felt like I could actually be myself without the constant fear of bullying. One of the first things I did was seek out the university's counseling services. I knew I had a lot of baggage to unpack, and I didn't want my past to ruin this fresh start. I was assigned to Dr. Martin, a kind and patient psychotherapist who specialized in working with students. In our first session, I spilled everything: the bullying, the humiliation, the loneliness. Dr. Martin listened without judgment and assured me that we would work through it together. Over the next several months, I attended weekly therapy sessions. Dr. Martin helped me understand how the bullying had affected my self-esteem and taught me coping mechanisms to deal with anxiety and negative thoughts. We worked on building my confidence and learning to trust others again. It wasn't easy, and there were many times when I felt like giving up, but Dr. Martin's support was unwavering. As I settled into university life, I focused on my studies and tried to make friends. It wasn't easy at first. I was still wary of getting close to people, but slowly, I started to find my place. I joined a study group for my major and made a few friends who were supportive and kind. They didn't know about my past, and for the first time, I felt like I could start fresh. In my second year, I started looking for a part-time job to help cover my expenses. After a lot of searching and a few unsuccessful interviews, I landed a job as a barista at a local coffee shop. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. The staff was friendly, and I enjoyed learning how to make different types of coffee. Plus, it gave me a chance to interact with people and build my social skills. 3 years flew by, and I was thriving academically and personally. My hard work paid off, and I was promoted to a shift supervisor at the coffee shop. My manager, Lisa, recognized my dedication and potential, and she took me under her wing. She taught me about management and customer service, and I started to see a future for myself in the business world. Around this time, I decided to take up swimming. I had always enjoyed it as a kid, and I thought it would be a great way to stay fit and relieve stress. I joined the university's recreational swim team and quickly found a group of like-minded people who shared my passion. We trained together, competed in local meets, and even organized social events. It felt amazing to be part of a team and to have friends who supported and encouraged me. Swimming became a huge part of my life, and I started thinking about how I could turn this passion into something more. I began researching the idea of starting a business related to swimming. I noticed there was a gap in the market for high-quality, affordable swim gear and accessories. After months of planning and saving up, I took the plunge and opened a small business with one of my teammates, Sarah. We called it Age Enterprises Age. Starting Age was one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences of my life. We began by selling swim caps, goggles, and training gear online. We used social media to market our products and participated in local swim meets to spread the word. The first few months were tough, and there were times when we doubted whether we'd make it. But our dedication paid off, and our business started to grow. Balancing university, my part-time job, and running Age was no small feat. There were late nights and early mornings, and I had to learn how to manage my time effectively. But seeing our business grow and knowing that we were helping other swimmers made it all worth it. After graduation, I decided to focus on Age full-time. With the additional time and effort, Age expanded rapidly. We moved from online sales to opening a small storefront near the university. We hired a few employees and started offering swim coaching clinics on weekends. Our reputation grew, and we began getting orders from swim teams and clubs across the state. Throughout all of this, I continued my therapy sessions with Dr. Martin. Even though my life was on an upward trajectory, I knew that maintaining my mental health was crucial. Dr. Martin helped me navigate the stresses of running a business and reminded me to take time for self-care. Looking back, it's incredible to see how far I have come. From being the bullied kid in high school to a successful business owner, the journey has been filled with ups and downs. There were times when I felt like giving up, but I'm so glad I didn't. The support from my friends, the lessons from my therapist, and my passion for swimming all played a crucial role in my transformation. Today, Age is thriving, and I am proud of what we've built. We are planning to expand our product line and open a second store in a neighboring city. I've also started volunteering as a swim coach for local youth programs, hoping to inspire and support young swimmers the way others have supported me. I still have moments of self-doubt and anxiety, but I've learned to manage them and to focus on the positive aspects of my life. I am grateful for the opportunities I have had and the people who've helped me along the way. If there is one thing I've learned, it's that resilience and determination can overcome even the toughest challenges. Thanks for reading my update. Your encouragement and advice have meant the world to me. If anyone out there is struggling, just know that things can get better, and there's always hope for a brighter future. 3 years into running Age, things were looking up. Our business was expanding, our customer base was growing, and I felt like I had finally found my place in the world. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. It started on a regular Tuesday. I was at the shop, working on some new product listings when I got a call from my mom. I hadn't spoken to my parents much since moving to university. We were still pretty estranged. Hearing my mom's voice filled with panic was unusual, and it sent a shiver down my spine. "Your dad's in the hospital," she said, her voice breaking. "He had a heart attack." I rushed to the hospital, my mind racing. Despite our strained relationship, he was still my dad, and I couldn't imagine losing him. When I arrived, the doctors told us he was in critical condition but stable. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and tense conversations with my mom. It was a stark reminder of how fragile life is and how quickly things can change. My dad pulled through, but the experience shook me. I realized how disconnected I had become from my family. We decided to start family therapy to rebuild our relationship. It was difficult confronting years of neglect and misunderstanding, but it felt like a necessary step. Just as things seemed to be settling down, another bombshell dropped. One evening, I received a frantic call from Sarah, my business partner. "Someone broken into the store," she said, her voice trembling. "They trashed the place." I rushed over, my heart pounding. When I arrived, I was met with a devastating sight. The windows were shattered, shelves were overturned, and our stock was either stolen or destroyed. It was a nightmare. The police came, took statements, and started an investigation, but the damage was done. The break-in was a massive setback. We had insurance, but it would take time to process the claim, and the loss of inventory was a huge blow. I felt a mix of anger, frustration, and helplessness. We had worked so hard to build Age, and in one night it felt like it had all been taken away. Sarah and I spent the next few weeks picking up the pieces, both literally and figuratively. Our customers were incredibly supportive, and we received a lot of help from the local community, but it was still a tough period. We decided to install a more robust security system and took additional measures to protect our business. Emily seemed momentarily conflicted, but didn't protest. They dragged Tom out of the store, leaving behind a scene of chaos and fear. As soon as they were gone, I called the police and reported the robbery and kidnapping. The authorities arrived quickly, but by then, Emily and the biker had disappeared with Tom and the money. The aftermath was a blur of police statements, security footage reviews, and comforting traumatized customers and staff. The reality of what had happened hit me hard. My own sister had turned to crime and dragged me and my business into her mess. The guilt and anger were overwhelming. I spent the next few days working closely with the police, providing any information that could help find Emily, the biker, and Tom. The waiting was agonizing, but there was little else I could do. I felt helpless, caught in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The tension with my family only grew worse after the robbery. My parents blamed me for letting Emily back into my life, accusing me of being naive and irresponsible. Our therapy sessions became battlegrounds with more accusations and fewer solutions. I felt like I was being torn apart from all sides. A few days later, the police received a tip about the biker gang S hideout. A SWAT team was dispatched, and they managed to rescue Tom unharmed. Emily and her boyfriend were arrested, and the money was recovered. Seeing Emily in handcuffs was a gut-wrenching sight. Despite everything she had done, she was still my sister, and it hurt to see her in such a state. Emily's actions led to a prison sentence, and it was clear she needed serious help. I arranged for her to receive psychological counseling while incarcerated, hoping that she could find a way to turn her life around. It was a small consolation, but it was all I could do. In the months that followed, I threw myself into my work, trying to rebuild what had been damaged by the robbery. Age managed to recover, thanks to the support of our loyal customers and the dedication of our staff. The experience had left scars, both on the business and on me personally, but it also reinforced my determination to keep moving forward. The relationship with my family remained strained. Our attempts at reconciliation were fraught with tension and unresolved issues. I realized that while I could hope for better days, some wounds would take a long time to heal, if they ever did at all. Through it all, I leaned heavily on my friends and my therapist, Dr. Martin. They provided the support and stability I desperately needed. Slowly, I began to find a new equilibrium, balancing the demands of my business with the ongoing process of healing from the emotional turmoil of my family IS's actions. Thank you for following my story and for all the support and encouragement along the way. In the aftermath of the robbery and the shocking revelation of my half-sister's actions, I hoped things would start to stabilize. Unfortunately, the tension with my parents only intensified. Our therapy sessions had become increasingly hostile, with more shouting matches than meaningful conversations. My parents, especially my mother, were relentless in their accusations and criticisms. They blamed me for Emily's behavior, for the robbery, and even for the strained relationship within the family. One evening, after yet another explosive therapy session, my parents announced that they were done with counseling. My mother looked me straight in the eyes. "This is pointless. You clearly don't appreciate anything we have done for you. We were done trying." I was taken aback. "What do you mean? We need to work through this. We've done enough," my father interjected. "We raised you, gave you everything. This is how you repay us, by dragging this family's name through the mud." Around this time, I was also growing closer to my half-sister Emily. Meeting her had been a whirlwind, and it felt like I had found a piece of family I never knew I was missing. We started spending more time together, getting to know each other, and sharing stories about our father. She seemed genuinely interested in building a relationship with me, and I was excited about the possibility of having a sibling I could rely on. However, things started to take a strange turn. At first, it was little things Emily would ask to borrow money, which I didn't mind at all. But then she started making larger requests, like asking for help with her rent and bills. I understood that she was going through a tough time, so I helped out as much as I could. After all, she was family. One day, Emily called me in tears, saying she had lost her job and was about to be evicted. She begged me to let her stay with me until she could get back on her feet. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. I had a spare room, and I couldn't turn my back on her when she was in need. At first, things seemed fine. Emily was grateful and promised to find a new job quickly, but weeks turned into months, and she showed no signs of making an effort to change her situation. She'd sleep in late, spend hours watching TV, and never contribute to household chores. I was still covering her expenses, and it was starting to take a toll on me financially and emotionally. The final straw came when I discovered that Emily had been using my credit card without my permission. I found several unauthorized charges, including expensive clothing and electronics. When I confronted her, she broke down in tears, apologizing and promising it wouldn't happen again. She claimed she was just trying to make herself feel better and didn't realize the impact it would have on me. I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to believe her, to help her through whatever she was dealing with. But another part of me was furious and felt betrayed. I decided to give her one last chance. I told her she needed to find a job and start contributing to the household, or she would have to leave. Things didn't improve. Emily continued to take advantage of my kindness, and the tension between us grew. One evening, I came home to find that she had thrown a party without my permission. My house was a mess, and some of my personal belongings were missing. I confronted her again, and this time she lashed out, accusing me of being selfish and not understanding her struggles. That night, I made the difficult decision to ask her to leave. I couldn't keep enabling her behavior, and I needed to protect myself and my mental health. Emily didn't take it well. She stormed out, leaving behind a trail of anger and hurt. A few days later, I received a call from a debt collector. Apparently, Emily had taken out a loan in my name, using my personal information. I was shocked and felt completely betrayed. I never thought she would go that far. I immediately reported the fraud and started the process of clearing my name. But the damage had been done. It was a long and stressful ordeal, and it took months to resolve. The experience with Emily left me feeling deeply hurt and mistrustful. It was hard to believe that someone I had welcomed into my life and tried to help could betray me in such a way. I struggled with feelings of guilt, wondering if I had missed signs or could have done something differently. During this time, my therapy sessions with Dr. Martin became even more crucial. She helped me work through my feelings of betrayal and guilt and reminded me that it was okay to set boundaries and protect myself. It was a painful lesson, but I learned that sometimes even family can let you down. Despite the setbacks, Age continued to grow. We opened our second store, and it was a huge success. Sarah and I expanded our product line and started offering swim classes and clinics. The business was thriving, and it was a welcome distraction from the personal turmoil I was experiencing. I also leaned on my friends from the swim team and the business community. Their support and encouragement helped me stay focused and positive. I realized how important it was to surround myself with people who genuinely cared about me and wanted to see me succeed. Life has a way of testing us, and the experience with Emily was one of the toughest challenges I have faced. But it also taught me a lot about resilience, trust, and the importance of setting boundaries. I am still healing from the betrayal, but I am moving forward and focusing on the positive aspects of my life. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. Your advice and support have been invaluable, and I appreciate everyone who has reached out. Despite the success of Age and the progress I had made in my personal life, tension with my family continued to grow. Family therapy sessions revealed deep-seated issues that had been buried for years. My parents and I struggled to bridge the gap that had formed during my childhood. They wanted to make amends, but the wounds were still fresh, and our conversations often ended in arguments rather than resolutions. My mother's attempts to reconnect felt forced and awkward. She would call me frequently, sometimes just to criticize my decisions or express disappointment in my lifestyle choices. My father, though more reserved, showed his disapproval in subtle ways. He never outright said it, but it was clear he thought I should have pursued a more respectable career instead of running a small business. The strain was exhausting, and every interaction left me feeling more alienated. Amidst all this, I hadn't heard from Emily since the fallout over her fraudulent activities. I tried to put her out of my mind and focus on my life and business, but the betrayal still stung. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, Emily reappeared in the most unexpected and terrifying way. It was a busy Saturday afternoon at Age's main store. The place was bustling with customers, and I was in the back office catching up on paperwork. Sarah was managing the floor, and everything seemed to be running smoothly. Out of nowhere, the store's front door slammed open with a loud bang. Startled, I looked at the security monitors and saw Emily storming in, accompanied by a rough-looking guy in a leather jacket. My heart sank. Emily's appearance was alarming. She looked disheveled, and her eyes were wild. The man with her, who I later learned was her biker boyfriend, had a menacing presence. He was heavily tattooed, with a scar running down his cheek and a permanent scowl on his face. I immediately sensed that this was going to be bad. Before I could react, I heard shouting from the front of the store. "Everyone get down! This is a robbery!" Her boyfriend pulled out a gun, and the entire store fell into a panicked silence. Customers dropped to the floor, and Sarah froze in shock. I rushed out of the office, trying to stay calm. "Emily, what the hell are you doing?" I trying to reach her through the chaos. Emily turned to me, her face twisted with rage and desperation. "We need the money, and you're going to give it to us." The biker waved the gun around, pointing it at Sarah and the customers. "Do as she says, and nobody gets hurt." My mind raced. I had to defuse the situation without anyone getting hurt. Okay, I said, trying to sound as calm as possible. "Just take whatever you need. There is no need for violence." I moved towards the cash register, and Sarah, trembling, handed over the cash. Emily grabbed the money, stuffing it into a bag. The biker, meanwhile, kept his gun trained on everyone, his finger twitching on the trigger. As they were about to leave, the biker's eyes landed on a young employee named Tom, who was standing near the exit. The biker grabbed Tom by the collar and shoved the gun in his face. "You're coming with us," he snarled. Tom's eyes widened in terror. Emily seemed momentarily conflicted, but didn't protest. They dragged Tom out of the store, leaving behind a scene of chaos and fear. As soon as they were gone, I called the police and reported the robbery and kidnapping. The authorities arrived quickly, but by then, Emily and the biker had disappeared with Tom and the money. The aftermath was a blur of police statements, security footage reviews, and comforting traumatized customers and staff. The reality of what had happened hit me hard. My own sister had turned to crime and dragged me and my business into her mess. The guilt and anger were overwhelming. I spent the next few days working closely with the police, providing any information that could help find Emily, the biker, and Tom. The waiting was agonizing, but there was little else I could do. I felt helpless, caught in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The tension with my family only grew worse after the robbery. My parents blamed me for letting Emily back into my life, accusing me of being naive and irresponsible. Our therapy sessions became battlegrounds, with more accusations and fewer solutions. I felt like I was being torn apart from all sides. A few days later, the police received a tip about the biker gang's hideout. A SWAT team was dispatched, and they managed to rescue Tom unharmed. Emily and her boyfriend were arrested, and the money was recovered. Seeing Emily in handcuffs was a gut-wrenching sight. Despite everything she had done, she was still my sister, and it hurt to see her in such a state. Emily's actions led to a prison sentence, and it was clear she needed serious help. I arranged for her to receive psychological counseling while incarcerated, hoping that she could find a way to turn her life around. It was a small consolation, but it was all I could do. In the months that followed, I threw myself into my work trying to rebuild what had been damaged by the robbery. Age managed to recover, thanks to the support of our loyal customers and the dedication of our staff. The experience had left scars, both on the business and on me personally, but it also reinforced my determination to keep moving forward. The relationship with my family remained strained. Our attempts at reconciliation were fraught with tension and unresolved issues. I realized that while I could hope for better days, some wounds would take a long time to heal if they ever did at all. Through it all, I leaned heavily on my friends and my therapist, Dr. Martin. They provided the support and stability I desperately needed. Slowly, I began to find a new equilibrium, balancing the demands of my business with the ongoing process of healing from the emotional turmoil of my family's actions. Thank you for following my story and for all the support and encouragement along the way. In the aftermath of the robbery and the shocking revelation of my half-sister's actions, I hoped things would start to stabilize. Unfortunately, the tension with my parents only intensified. Our therapy sessions had become increasingly hostile, with more shouting matches than meaningful conversations. My parents, especially my mother, were relentless in their accusations and criticisms. They blamed me for Emily S.'s behavior, for the robbery, and even for the strained relationship within the family. One evening, after yet another explosive therapy session, my parents announced that they were done with counseling. My mother looked me straight in the eyes. "This is pointless. You clearly don't appreciate anything we've done for you. We're done trying." I was taken aback. "What do you mean? We need to work through this." "We've done enough," my father interjected. "We raised you, gave you everything. This is how you repay us, by dragging this family's name through the mud." I was speechless. Their refusal to continue therapy felt like a betrayal. They were essentially abandoning any hope of reconciliation, leaving me to deal with the fallout on my own. I stormed out of the session, feeling utterly defeated. A few weeks later, I received a letter from a law firm representing my parents. They were suing me for $100,000, claiming it was compensation for the cost of raising me. The letter detailed how they had spent an enormous amount of money on my upbringing, private schools, extracurricular activities, and living expenses, and now they wanted to be reimbursed for their investment. I was livid. It felt like the ultimate act of betrayal. Not only were they refusing to acknowledge the emotional damage they had caused, but now they were also demanding monetary compensation for doing what any parent should do, raising their child. I called my parents, trying to understand their reasoning. "How could you do this to me?" my voice shaking with anger. My mother's response was cold and calculated. "You've proven time and time again that you are ungrateful for everything we've done. You've caused nothing but trouble and embarrassment for this family. It is time you paid us back. This is insane. You are my parents. You're supposed to support me." My father chimed in. "Consider it a lesson in responsibility, Ryan. Maybe this will teach you to appreciate what you have." I hung up the phone feeling a mix of rage and despair. How could they do this? How could they turn their backs on me in such a callous way? The legal battle that followed was grueling. My lawyer, who was both empathetic and fiercely determined, assured me that the case was absurd and that we would fight it every step of the way. Throughout the litigation process, my parents' true colors became painfully clear. They submitted detailed records of expenses, itemizing everything from school fees to the cost of family vacations. They painted a picture of themselves as long-suffering parents who had been burdened by an ungrateful child. It was humiliating and heartbreaking to see how little they valued our relationship. The legal proceedings dragged on for months, draining me both emotionally and financially. I had to take time away from Age to deal with court appearances and meetings with my lawyer. The stress was immense, and I often found myself lying awake at night, wondering how things had gone so wrong. Despite the turmoil, I found strength in the support of my friends, my therapist, and my team at Age. Sarah and the other employees stepped up, ensuring the business continued to run smoothly in my absence. My therapist, Dr. Martin, helped me navigate the emotional wreckage, reminding me to take things one day at a time and to focus on my own well-being. In court, my parents' case began to unravel. The judge questioned the legality and morality of their claim, and my lawyer skillfully highlighted the absurdity of suing a child for the cost of their upbringing. After several tense sessions, the judge dismissed the case, ruling in my favor. While the legal victory was a relief, it didn't erase the emotional damage. The lawsuit had driven a final wedge between me and my parents. I couldn't bring myself to speak to them after that, and they made no effort to reach out to me. It was clear that our relationship was beyond repair. In the aftermath, I focused on rebuilding my life and my business. I threw myself into work, determined to make Age even more successful. I also continued my therapy, working through the pain and betrayal I felt from my parents. It wasn't easy, but over time I began to heal. I realized that sometimes the people who are supposed to love and support you can cause the most harm. It was a harsh lesson, but it taught me to value the relationships that truly mattered, the friends and colleagues who stood by me through thick and thin. Years later, Age had grown into a thriving business with multiple locations and a loyal customer base. I found happiness and fulfillment in my work and in the supportive network of friends and mentors I had built around me. While the scars from my family's actions remained, they no longer defined me. I had forged my own path, and I was proud of the person I had become. To anyone going through a similar struggle, know that you are not alone. It is okay to distance yourself from toxic relationships, even if they are a family. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, and never lose sight of your own worth. Life is too short to be weighed down by the negativity of others. Last update. The news came on a quiet Tuesday evening. I was at home finishing up some work for Age when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something compelled me to answer. The voice on the other end was somber, a police officer delivering the kind of news no one ever wants to hear. My parents had been in a car accident. They didn't survive. The officer explained that my father had been driving under the influence, swerving off the road and hitting a tree. My mother had been asleep in the passenger seat. Both of them died on impact. The details blurred together as I listened in shock, trying to comprehend the reality of what I was hearing. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and responsibilities. Arrangements had to be made for their funerals, and despite everything that had happened between us, I felt a deep sense of obligation to handle things properly. I contacted family members, dealt with the funeral home, and sorted through their affairs. It was a surreal experience, organizing the final rites for people who had caused me so much pain. The day of the funeral was overcast, matching the heavy feeling in my chest. A small gathering of family and a few old friends came to pay their respects. As I stood by the graves, watching the caskets being lowered into the ground, a flood of conflicting emotions washed over me. There was sorrow. Of course they were my parents. And despite everything, losing them was devastating. But there was also anger, frustration, and a sense of unresolved conflict. So many things had been left unsaid, so many wounds never healed. After the funeral, I returned to my parents' house to sort through their belongings. Walking through the empty rooms, I was hit by a wave of nostalgia and bitterness. The house was filled with memories, both good and bad. Family photos lined the walls, mementos from trips we had taken, and remnants of a life that had once seemed normal. As I sifted through their things, I found letters, documents, and personal items that painted a fuller picture of their lives. I discovered that my father had struggled with alcoholism for years, a fact that had been hidden from me. There were receipts for rehab centers and counseling sessions, evidence of battles fought and lost. My mother's journals revealed her own struggles with depression and anxiety, her worries about me, and her guilt over how things had turned out. Reading these documents gave me a strange sense of closure. I began to understand that their actions, as hurtful as they were, came from a place of deep personal pain. It didn't excuse the way they treated me, but it helped me see them as flawed humans rather than just parents who had failed me. Dealing with the legal and financial aftermath was another ordeal. Their estate was in disarray, and it took months to untangle the mess. I had to deal with lawyers, settle debts, and sell their house. Throughout this period, I leaned heavily on my friends and my therapist, Dr. Martin. They provided the support and stability I needed to navigate this difficult time. Dr. Martin helped me process my grief and complex emotions, reminding me that it was okay to feel a mix of sorrow and relief. My friends from the swim team and Age stood by me, offering their help and companionship when I needed it most. In the months that followed, I focused on healing and moving forward. I poured my energy into Age, using work as a way to cope with my grief. The business continued to thrive, expanding to new locations and offering new products. It became a source of pride and a reminder of how far I had come. I also made a conscious effort to take care of my mental health. I continued my therapy sessions, practiced self-care, and made time for activities that brought me joy. Swimming remained a vital part of my life, a way to clear my mind and stay grounded. While the pain of losing my parents and the unresolved issues between us will always be a part of me, I've learned to focus on the positive aspects of my life. I've built a successful business, formed meaningful relationships, and found a sense of purpose and fulfillment. To anyone reading this, know that it is possible to overcome even the darkest times. It is okay to feel a mix of emotions, to grieve, and to seek help. Surround yourself with supportive people, take care of your mental health, and never lose sight of your own worth. Life may throw unimaginable challenges your way, but with resilience and determination, you can find a way to move forward and create a brighter future. Thank you for following my story and for all the support along the way.